The smell of chloroform and laudanum hung thick in the air. Queen Victoria lay unconscious on her bed while her doctor performed an operation that would shock the world. But this wasn't a medical emergency. This was Tuesday. The Queen of the British Empire, ruler of a quarter of the world's population, was getting her weekly treatment for hysteria. What you're about to discover will completely shatter your image of Victorian propriety. Because behind the lace curtains and proper manners, Victoria's court was a circus of bizarre rituals, sexual obsessions, and medical madness that would make modern reality TV look tame. 1837 to 1901, the Victorian era, an age we remember for moral righteousness, industrial progress, and imperial grandeur. But that's the sanitized version history wants you to believe. The real Victorian court was a freak show of the highest order. Today, I'm taking you behind the palace walls to expose the truth. We'll discover why the Queen kept her dead husband's clothes laid out fresh every morning for 40 years, how courtiers were forced to walk backwards for miles to avoid offending royal protocol, and why Victoria's obsession with one particular bodily function nearly caused a diplomatic crisis with Germany. This isn't the Victorian England you learned about in school. This is the bizarre, twisted reality that proper historians don't want you to know. The Morning Madness. December 14, 1861, Windsor Castle. Prince Albert dies of typhoid fever at age 42. Victoria's grief is understandable, expected even. What happens next is not. The Queen orders Albert's room preserved exactly as it was the moment he died. His clothes are laid out fresh every morning. Hot water is brought for his shaving. His chamber pot is emptied daily for 40 years. Servants are required to maintain this ritual until Victoria's own death in 1901. Imagine being the poor maid whose job it is to prepare a dead man's breakfast every single day for 4 decades. But that's just the beginning of Victoria's morning madness. She orders the entire court into permanent mourning dress, black clothes, black jewelry, black everything. Ladies in waiting who dare wear a hint of color are banished from court. One duchess is exiled for wearing purple ribbons. Purple, the color of royalty. Banned because it wasn't black enough. The Séance sessions. Here's where Victoria's grief turns genuinely disturbing. She becomes obsessed with communicating with Albert's spirit, not through prayer, through seances. The Queen of England starts holding regular meetings with mediums and spiritualists. John Brown, her Scottish servant, becomes her primary spiritual advisor. He claims he can channel Albert's ghost. Victoria believes every word. She makes major political decisions based on what Albert's spirit tells her through Brown. Cabinet ministers are forced to sit through seances before important meetings. Picture this: the Prime Minister of the British Empire taking orders from a dead prince channeled through a Scottish servant. Foreign ambassadors report back to their governments that the Queen of England has lost her mind. They're not wrong. The backwards walking protocol. Victorian court etiquette reaches levels of absurdity that defy belief. No one is allowed to turn their back on the Queen, ever. This means when leaving her presence, courtiers must walk backwards. Sounds simple enough, right? Wrong. Some royal audiences last for hours. Imagine walking backwards for 3 miles through Windsor Castle, downstairs, around corners, through doorways, all while maintaining perfect posture and dignity. Ladies in massive crinolines regularly crash into furniture. Lords trip over their own swords. One ambassador falls backwards down an entire flight of stairs. Victoria watches these disasters with amusement. She never changes the rule. The chloroform queen. Victoria becomes the first monarch in history to use anesthesia during childbirth. This should be progressive, right? It would be if she stopped there. But Victoria develops an addiction to chloroform that borders on the pathological. She uses it for headaches, for menstrual cramps, for nervous exhaustion, for boredom. Her personal physician, Dr. John Snow, becomes essentially a royal drug dealer. He administers chloroform treatments multiple times per week. Victoria lies unconscious for hours while her empire runs itself. Cabinet meetings are postponed because the Queen is indisposed. Translation: she's high as a kite on Victorian anesthesia. The really disturbing part? She starts giving chloroform to her children. For discipline, misbehaving princes and princesses are knocked unconscious as punishment. Child services would have a field day with Queen Victoria, the obsession with bodily functions. Here's where Victorian propriety meets Victorian perversion. Victoria becomes obsessed with everyone's bathroom habits, not metaphorically, literally. She keeps detailed records of her family's bowel movements, dates, times, consistency, color, all meticulously documented in royal ledgers. Her children's tutors are required to report on their charge's digestive health. Prince Bertie had a satisfactory movement this morning, Your Majesty. This obsession extends to her courtiers. Ladies in waiting must report their monthly cycles. Male courtiers are questioned about their urinary habits. Victoria believes bowel regularity is directly connected to moral character. Constipated courtiers are considered morally suspect. This leads to the Great Prune Incident of 1867. The Great Prune Incident. The German Kaiser visits Windsor Castle. Victoria, concerned about his digestive health, orders the kitchen to serve him prunes at every meal. Breakfast prunes, lunch prunes, dinner prunes. The Kaiser, trying to be polite, eats them all. By day 3, he's spending more time in the bathroom than the throne room. He finally asks why he's being served so many prunes. Victoria explains her theory about bowel movements and moral character. The Kaiser is so offended he nearly declares war. Diplomatic relations between Britain and Germany are strained for months, all because of the Queen's obsession with poop, the Highland servant scandal. John Brown isn't just Victoria's spiritual advisor. He becomes her closest companion, closer than any servant should be to a queen. Brown calls Victoria by her first name in public. He tells her what to do. She obeys. He drinks heavily and swears constantly. She finds it charming. Rumors spread that they're secretly married, that Brown is the real power behind the throne. Victoria doesn't care. She promotes Brown to personal attendant to Her Majesty. She gives him his own apartment in every royal residence. She has his portrait painted and hung in the royal gallery, next to portraits of kings and princes. The British press goes insane. They call her Mrs. Brown. Victoria threatens to abdicate if anyone criticizes her Highland servant, the food-tasting paranoia. After several assassination attempts, Victoria develops extreme paranoia about poisoning. Every meal must be tasted by multiple servants, not just tasted, analyzed. She employs a team of food chemists to test every dish. Meals that should take 30 minutes to prepare take 3 hours. The Queen's dinner is cold by the time it reaches her. She doesn't care. Better cold than poisoned. But the paranoia extends beyond food. Her clothes are tested for poison. Her jewelry is examined for hidden needles. Her bed sheets are changed 3 times daily, just in case. The really bizarre part? She makes her guests go through the same process. Visiting dignitaries must have their food tested too. Foreign ambassadors report waiting hours for meals while chemists analyze their soup. The miniature coffin collection. Victoria's obsession with death goes beyond mourning Albert. She starts collecting miniature coffins, hundreds of them, made from different materials, different styles. She displays them throughout her private apartments. Guests are horrified to find tiny coffins on every table and shelf. Victoria explains that they remind her of life's fragility. Her children find them terrifying. Her grandchildren refuse to visit her private rooms, but Victoria keeps adding to the collection. By 1890, she owns over 500 miniature coffins. She knows each one by heart. She names them after people she's outlived. The photographic obsession. Victoria becomes one of the first monarchs to embrace photography, but her approach is typically bizarre. She commissions thousands of photographs, not just of herself, of everything. Her food, her clothes, her furniture, her dead pets. She has a photographer on staff whose only job is documenting royal life. Every meal is photographed before eating. Every outfit is photographed before wearing. Every room is photographed before entering. The royal photo collection grows to over 20,000 images, most of them completely mundane. Here's Tuesday's breakfast. Here's Wednesday's hat. Here's Thursday's chamber pot. Victoria reviews these photographs daily, like a Victorian Instagram feed, but infinitely more boring. The language police. Victoria becomes obsessed with controlling language at court. Certain words are banned entirely. Stomach is too vulgar. Must say interior. Pregnant is forbidden. Must say in an interesting condition. Legs is scandalous. Must say limbs. Even breast of chicken is banned. Must say white meat. Courtiers carry lists of approved vocabulary. Speaking incorrectly results in immediate banishment. One lord is exiled for saying damn in the Queen's presence. Another is banished for using the word belly. The French ambassador accidentally says pregnant and causes a diplomatic incident. Victoria's language police become so extreme that normal conversation becomes impossible. The dress code insanity. Victorian fashion is already restrictive. Victoria makes it worse. She issues detailed dress codes for every occasion. Morning dress, afternoon dress, evening dress, night dress, each with specific colors, fabrics, and accessories. Ladies-in-waiting need different outfits for different rooms in the palace. The blue room requires blue accessories. The red room requires red accessories. The green room requires, you get the idea. Women need dozens of outfits just to navigate the palace. One duchess goes bankrupt, trying to keep up with Victoria's dress codes. Another faints from the weight of her required jewelry. But Victoria doesn't care. Appearance is everything, even if it bankrupts the nobility. The pet cemetery protocol. Victoria loves animals, especially dogs. When they die, she gives them full funeral services, complete with coffins, headstones, and burial ceremonies. The Royal Pet Cemetery at Windsor becomes larger than many human cemeteries. Each pet gets a personalized headstone with a lengthy epitaph. Victoria writes these epitaphs herself. They're longer than most human obituaries. Here lies Dash, beloved spaniel, faithful companion, noble heart, taken too soon by cruel fate. For a dog, the pet funerals become elaborate affairs. Courtiers are required to attend, in full mourning dress. Grown men weeping over dead spaniels because the Queen demands it. The final bizarre ritual. Victoria's strangest habit is saved for last. Every night before bed, she performs the same ritual. She kisses a photograph of Albert. Then she kisses a lock of his hair. Then she talks to his empty chair for exactly 15 minutes. She tells him about her day, asks his advice on political matters, argues with him about family issues. Servants standing guard outside her door hear both sides of these conversations. Victoria speaks in her normal voice. Then she changes her voice to answer as Albert. For 40 years, every single night, the Queen of the British Empire having imaginary conversations with her dead husband. Queen Victoria ruled for 63 years. She presided over the largest empire in human history. She gave her name to an entire era. But behind the imperial grandeur was a woman so bizarre, so obsessed, so completely unhinged that her own family worried about her sanity. She talked to dead husbands, collected miniature coffins, banned common words, forced diplomats to eat prunes, and made grown men walk backwards for miles. This wasn't the dignified Victorian era you learned about in school. This was a circus run by a grieving widow who happened to wear a crown. The British Empire conquered a quarter of the world while being ruled by a woman who thought bowel movements determined moral character. Maybe that explains a lot about British foreign policy. Victoria died in 1901, still talking to Albert's ghost. Her final words were reportedly, "Albert is calling me." After 40 years of one-sided conversations, maybe he finally answered back. Which of Victoria's bizarre habits shocked you the most? The séances, the backwards walking, the prune obsession? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to hear more about the weird reality behind historical figures, subscribe and hit the bell. Next week, I'm covering the medieval punishment that made nobles beg for death. Trust me, it makes Victoria's bizarre habits look like harmless eccentricities. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.